Rome was the greatest empire the world had ever known. But beneath its power, cracks were already spreading. Wars, corruption, and collapsing institutions weakened its foundations. Then in 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire fell, ending an age of glory and plunging Europe into a new and uncertain era. With Rome gone, Europe descended into centuries of uncertainty. Great cities faded, roads crumbled, and kingdoms rose from the ruins. In a world of war, faith, and survival, the Dark Ages had begun. From the chaos of the Dark Ages, one ruler emerged to reshape Europe. Charlemagne united vast lands through conquest, diplomacy, and faith. In 800 AD, crowned emperor by the Pope, he forged a new Western Empire, laying the foundations of medieval Europe and reviving the dream of Rome. As Charlemagne's legacy endured, a new power emerged in the heart of Europe. The Holy Roman Empire united kings, nobles, and the church under a single imperial vision. Cathedrals rose, armies expanded, and symbols of authority were carved into stone, marking the birth of an empire that would shape Europe for centuries.
We must secure the eastern borders immediately.
In the Holy Roman Empire, faith and power became inseparable. Monasteries preserved knowledge, while magnificent cathedrals proclaimed divine authority. Emperors ruled by the blessing of the Church, and armies marched beneath the sign of the cross. Yet behind this sacred alliance lay a constant struggle between spiritual devotion and the pursuit of worldly power. As Europe fractured into rival kingdoms, conflict became inevitable. Kings gathered their armies, and the first great medieval wars erupted across the land. Arrows darkened the sky, cavalry shattered enemy lines, and entire villages burned in the chaos. In an age of steel and fire, survival belonged only to the strongest. With each passing decade, the Holy Roman Empire pushed its influence farther across Europe. Through conquest, alliances, and political strategy, its borders expanded beyond the ambitions of earlier rulers. What began as a fragile union was transforming into one of the most powerful forces of the medieval world. Across newly claimed territories, nobles pledged their loyalty to the emperor, offering wealth, land, and military support in exchange for protection and privilege. Imperial authority reached deeper into everyday life, binding distant regions under a single political vision. Cities prospered as trade routes expanded and populations grew. Markets flourished, celebrations filled the streets, and the empire projected an image of stability and strength. Yet behind the spectacle stood a disciplined military machine, always ready to defend or extend its power. Armies crossed vast plains beneath imperial banners, carrying the emperor's influence to the farthest frontiers. Every decree, every treaty, and every royal seal reinforced a growing system of centralized authority, and rising above it all were the great cathedrals, monuments of faith, wealth, and ambition. Their towering spires dominated the horizon, proclaiming a message to all who saw them. The Holy Roman Empire had entered an age of expansion, power, and enduring influence. As the Holy Roman Empire grew in power, so did the forces threatening to divide it. Beneath the grandeur of cathedrals and royal courts, a dangerous struggle was unfolding, one between faith, authority, and ambition.
The throne will
Bishops,
fall.
nobles, and military leaders fought for influence, turning political disagreements into bitter rivalries. Alliances shattered, trust disappeared, and the stability of the empire began to weaken from within. At the same time, thousands marched across Europe in the name of religion. Crusaders endured brutal winters, deadly battles, and unimaginable hardship, driven by faith and the promise of divine purpose. Yet while armies fought abroad, unrest spread at home. Monasteries worked tirelessly to preserve knowledge as news of war, rebellion, and conflict arrived from every corner of the empire. The greatest challenge emerged when emperors and church leaders collided over one question: who held ultimate authority, the crown or the cross? What began as a political dispute soon ignited public anger. Cities became divided, rival factions filled the streets, and order slowly gave way to chaos. For the Holy Roman Empire, the threat no longer came from foreign enemies. It was rising from within its own walls. No empire falls in a single day. The collapse begins with cracks, small at first, then impossible to ignore. By the late Middle Ages, the Holy Roman Empire was no longer a united force. Powerful princes demanded greater independence, regional rivalries intensified, and the authority of the emperor weakened with every passing year. What had once been a vast political vision began to fracture into competing territories. Imperial councils descended into bitter disputes, where loyalty gave way to ambition and allies became enemies. The strain of endless wars drained the empire's wealth. Treasuries emptied, taxes increased, and the cost of maintaining power grew unbearable. Across the frontiers, unpaid soldiers abandoned their posts, leaving defenses weakened and borders exposed. The symbols of imperial unity still remained, but their power was fading. The crown that once commanded Europe now struggled to hold together a realm divided by politics, economics, and competing interests. As storms gathered over the imperial capital, a harsh reality became impossible to deny. The greatest threat to the Holy Roman Empire was no longer invasion from abroad. It was the slow collapse of authority from within. The age of unity was ending, and a new era of uncertainty had begun. As tensions reached their breaking point, the Holy Roman Empire descended into one of the most violent periods in history. Political rivalries evolved into open warfare, and regions once united under a single banner turned their weapons against one another. Across vast battlefields, thousands soldiers gathered beneath competing flags. War drums echoed through the dawn as commanders prepared for a conflict that would decide the future of the empire. Arrows darkened the sky. Cavalry charges shattered defensive lines. Steel collided with steel as chaos consumed the battlefield. In the smoke and confusion, victory and defeat were often separated by a single moment. The violence extended beyond the battlefield. Cities and fortresses became targets of relentless sieges. Towering walls that had stood for generations were reduced to rubble as fire and destruction spread across the land. But as the fighting continued, the cost became impossible to ignore. Entire regions were devastated, economies collapsed, and countless lives were lost in a struggle for power. When the battles finally ended, no true victor emerged. Across the scarred landscape, survivors searched through the ruins of a world forever changed. The empire still stood, but the wounds left by civil war would shape its destiny for centuries to come.